Well, good evening everyone and a very warm welcome to each one of you. It's always so nice to see people from Jaipur just coming together for the love of books, so I hope. Um, so yes, again another episode of Right Circle with the winter rains greeting us and also us having lost a match today, I believe. So what better than to lose yourself in a very scintillating conversation that we're going to have with, and let's have a round of applause for Aparna, Piramal, Raje, who's a writer, columnist, speaker, educator, many hats, and her new book is Chemical Khichdi, How I Hacked My Mental Health. So it's a book about her experiences, but you'll find that it resonates with each one of us because at some stage you'll all feel, this is my story. I also felt something similar. And what a nice way to look for pragmatic solutions, to have a dialogue, to engage with your own mental health, with your own thoughts. Aparna also has her first book called Working Out of the Box, 40 Stories of Leading CEOs. She's also been contributing to UK's Financial Times Weekend. And she's a visiting faculty member at Anand National University. And I've missed a few things in the middle because she's just done too much. So let her conversation speak for herself. And with us we have as moderator, and everyone knows her, Major Dr. Meeta Singh. She's a doctor, soldier, humanitarian, and the kind of work she does with women's rights, with girl child, security, education, everything. As I said, humanitarian, so it encompasses a very large ambit. She's also got various awards. Oh God, this is a bit much. I'm not going to get into details, but everyone knows what Meeta's done, and I'm sure Aparna's also realized by now. So here's another Right Circle. In association with Prabha Khaitan Foundation, presented by Shri Cements, in association with Syahi, Assas Women and Stagia Foundation. And before Urvi glares at me a little more, please put your phones on silent. And I'm going to invite Aparna and Meeta on stage. But while we're coming, a couple of housekeeping rules. When I send the invite out, it applies only to one person. So if somebody is accompanying you, please message their names and numbers to me. They will be sent an invite separately. Last minute confirmations will not be tolerated, accepted, whatever. So please just try and respect what we are trying to do, because the audience has to circulate. I need to involve the rest of the city. And while I can't kind of enforce it, because as I said in my last episode also, you're all very dear to me, but please just try and comply and not send me last minute RSVPs, because I'll have to go back and say, I'm sorry, I can't accommodate you. If you're coming with someone, let me know when you confirm, and respect the RSVP date, because I have to keep the numbers. There is a certain intimacy to this event. There's a certain sanctity, and I think the kind of work we've been doing for 11 years with this series, everyone in the city needs to respect that. I don't think I'm asking for much. So, sorry, stern reprimand, but what to do? Okay, let's lapse into some more, let's shift back to Aparna and Meeta. Can I have you both on stage? To me. No, not more, because we have two very accomplished. Thank you for joining us today.
We are absolutely delighted to welcome Aparna, Piramal, Raje with us. Aparna अपने आप में एक बहुत ही खूबसूरत शख्सियत हैं और इनकी तमाम खूबियां हैं. As Meeta just listed out, her CV actually could run from Jaipur to Tokyo, but to put it in a nutshell, she's a multifaceted person, and most importantly, जो इसलिए आज वो यहाँ पर हैं, and the reason why we are so excited to have her here is that she has dared to bear. She has talked about mental health through her own experiences in this absolutely amazing book called Chemical Khichdi. What is really interesting is the fact that she breaks many myths in this. She also busts the horrible circle of ostracism, of shame, of neglect, of a shroud of secrecy that we have all seen related to mental health over much longer than it should have. सालों साल मानसिक रोगों का जो बहुत ही क्रूर चक्र है उसमें बहुत से लोग फंसे हुए हैं. उनमें से कुछ को हम जानते हैं, कुछ हमारे परिवार में हैं, कुछ हम में से भी हैं जो तरह तरह के मानसिक रोगों का सामना करते हैं. एंड मेंटल हेल्थ स्पेशली पोस्ट कोविड हैज शोन अ वेरी अलार्मिंग राइज, especially in terms of depression, in terms of suicidal thoughts. And what is really a matter of despair is that there is an increase among the youth, young लोगों में, युवाओं में इसकी जो बढ़ोतरी दर्ज की जा रही है वो वाकई चिंताजनक है. And I think this book is a book whose time has come. It should have been written even before. But indeed, it is important, it is urgent. ये किताब एक urgency के साथ आई है. It's a book that demands urgency, it demands everyone to read it too. So I think I will not come between her and you. But we shall start off with speaking with her, with listening to her story. हर किताब की एक यात्रा होती है, every book has a journey. So Aparna, tell us about your journey of writing this book, of your own childhood, your own life.
Thank you, Meeta ji and Meeta ji. I met my friend Deepti Kothari a few months ago, and she told me that in Jaipur we have these book sessions organized by Meeta ji and Prabha Khaitan Foundation, and I kept hoping that I would get an invite to come and speak here. So when I got the invite, I was really thrilled. I'm very fond of Jaipur. I'm from Shekhavati, from Jhunjhunu, also from Baghat, so not far away. And of course, I love shopping here, which I did. The first thing I did when I landed is I went to Rasa and I bought some clothes and some saris. So it's great to be here. You know, the thing about my life is that everything looks perfect from the outside. You know, and I think that is the case with many of us, that, you know, we are all doing well from a financial perspective, maybe we are comfortable, we have happy families, we might be well educated, we've traveled all over the world, everything looks perfect, you know, from the outside. But I have had a mental health condition for the last 20 years. And obviously at that time only my friends and family knew about it. And now, of course, I have shared the story with everyone. But it's the sort of thing that has taken me very up and very down. Now, you might think that today is a day like this, when in the match we went up and we went down. But my mood swings are very extreme. So when I am getting high or manic, I'm so in my own world that I could be having voices in my head. I'm just caught up in whatever world is going on. If there is a movie in my head, then I'm watching that movie in my head and I don't want to be disturbed. I have too many thoughts, I can't sleep, I have so much energy that it's really difficult for the people around me to navigate that. And that is called mania or hypomania. So this illness that I have is called bipolar disorder. I don't even now think of it as an illness, I think of it as a condition that I just have to live with, but technically it is called an illness. So it can take me very high, but even when I'm high, it's a very stressful time, it's a very demanding time for me because I just cannot sleep and I just cannot, and I just have too many thoughts. I want to say that a lot of people might have mood swings. You know, all of us feel angry, we feel frustrated, we feel sad. It doesn't mean that you're bipolar, okay? That's the first thing I want to say, because bipolar is something that happens to 1% of the population. But all of us are on that spectrum of mental wellness. Some days are better for us, some days are worse for us, you know? So anyway, so this thing started when I was in my 20s. I was about to go to Harvard. There was some trouble at home in my parents' marriage. And I was very, very excited. I literally thought I could change the world. You know, I was going to Harvard, I was going to meet these CEOs, I was going to change the world. I had finished doing an internship with Chandrababu Naidu's office. I felt like the most connected person in India. I thought I could advise the government on what I could do to change the world and those kinds of things. Those were the thoughts in my head, you know. And then it was so disturbing for my family that I couldn't travel by myself, so they had to come with me to the US and settle me down. And when they left, the depression came in, because the other side of the coin is depression. So, which I think many of us might be familiar with. And you know, depression can be very, very difficult, and you feel very isolated, you feel very alone. I was on a campus, you know, the best university in the world. I was on a campus with, you know, 1,000 other students, and they were all really enjoying it, but I would go to my room and I would be crying every day after class, for a whole bunch of reasons. So, you know, this is the kind of scenario that happened, and it happened for about, it's not happening all the time, but it happens in phases over a period of time. Luckily, I've been in a really good place for the last 4.5 years, so I haven't had to deal with either mania or depression, but I still have a lot of ups and downs on an everyday basis. And I still feel emotions very, very intensely. And I need to hack my mental health. That's why I call the book, you know, Hacking My Mental Health. I need to pay attention to my emotions, and that's where it all starts.
So wonderful. This book is a 3-in-1. It's a memoir where Aparna talks about her life. It's a study on bipolar condition, and very importantly, it is also a resource book. It's a reference book that everybody must read and must refer to, because ये एक आईना है हम सब के लिए, समाज का आईना है, हम सब का आईना है, और कहीं ना कहीं ये हम सबको छूती है ये किताब. So why not we have you read something from that book?
Thank you.
That would be so lovely.
I wrote a poem. मैं कभी-कभी कविताएं लिखती हैं. So this is a poem when I was recovering from depression. I had been asked to leave my family's business because they didn't think that I could be handling the business, or I was cut out for it, which was probably the right decision in the long run. Some of my former colleagues are also here, and they may agree or disagree. But you know, it was a very tough time for me to accept that I had to leave a family business and I was so associated with it. But so I wrote this poem called Turning Point. There are no headlines today, no cocktail launch parties or awards ceremonies, no business class seats and frequent flyer miles. There is the private knowledge that today was a day where nothing was written which would later be regretted. That today was a day where it didn't occur to me how easy it would be to jump off a building. Today was a day I didn't have to dismiss the thought. Today, there's a London bus made out of a cardboard box. There is camping under a blanket strung between 2 wooden dining chairs in the living room. Today, there are no moments of despair, no delusions of grandeur. Instead, an attitude of gratitude, moments of simplicity and spontaneity, and the promise of purpose.
Thank you. That was beautiful. So you have also busted many myths in the book, which are related to the stigma, mostly, that is associated with mental health. And like I said, it is so shrouded in secrecy in most families. It's a matter of shame, it's a matter of despair. But how would you sum up the busting of the myths which you've done in the book?
Thank you. I think that, I was talking to somebody and I said, I've written this book on mental health. And she said, oh great, it'll help a lot of people. And I said, yeah, it might help you also. And she said, me? I don't have a mental health issue. And the thing is, there's a lot of othering. Somebody else has the problem. This is somebody else's problem. But actually, we are all on the spectrum where we might need some guidance now and then on how to be happier. Who doesn't want to be happier? Who doesn't want emotional and mental well-being? So that's one thing. And the second thing is that, mental health is something that affects all of us. It's not like COVID. If somebody has a mental health issue, it affects the entire family. It affects the ecosystem. It affects the workplace. So we are all there to help other people. So that was one really big thing that I wanted to bust with this.
Aparna, you seem to have a charmed life, like you said, it's a dream life. Oxford, Harvard, being an senior executive, a CEO of a big company, a successful writer, and you are also a mother, a wife, you are a writer, you are somebody who has picked up a topic which has been taboo for several decades, several years. How do you manage to have a fulfilling career as well as because I read in your book that you have two wonderful children and a loving husband and you do a tightrope walk between the two. How do you manage it all?
Yeah, I think there are times in which you have to go fast and then there are times in which you have to go slow. So I think that there was a whole period where my health was not great. I was having these episodes every 6 months or 9 months or 12 months. And so I had to take a step back in my work and spend more time at home. And now I'm at a stage where I'm more productive than I've ever been before because I've been stable. So I think the thing is, it's absolutely possible to have any kind of mental health condition because bipolar, by the way, is in the same category as something like schizophrenia, which we all consider to be a very serious mental health condition. It's as serious as that. You may look at me and you say, oh, she's normal, so maybe she's not really bipolar. But the thing is that this is a condition that has very, very difficult side effects. People struggle with their careers, they struggle with their family life, they struggle with their social life. So that it is a problem. So I think the thing is that you really need to adjust and to be able to take it fast and take it slow, But the main thing is you have to want to do it. You have to say that I want to live a full life. I didn't want to be the mother who was waiting in her pajamas, waiting for the children to come home from school at 3 o'clock. That's not the life I wanted for myself.
So you set your own goals, as it were. And interestingly, like I said, and when I went through the book, it's quite unput down. बहुत सहज तरीके से लिखी गई किताब है. It is not about high funda, it is not technical, as in difficult to understand. It takes the reader through very gently through this phase that you've been through, and it also shows a mirror, like I said. So you have talked about the 7 hacks, the do-it-yourself part, the DIY part of the book, where you say that, well, these are the hacks, these are the ways in which one can cope with mental health, one can cope with such difficult situations which come up. And all of us, I think, in this room here and even in the larger circle, we do know somebody who's suffering from mental health, somebody in the family or in a circle of friends or somebody or even ourselves. We go through mood swings, like you said. But it's a whole spectrum. These are shades of when you step into bipolarity, we don't really know, and at what point of time in life it happens, that also we do not know. And that is why I think this book should be read by everybody. But I would like you to share with the audience here, and it's a very august audience, it's a very aware audience. So it would be wonderful if you share with them the hacks that you talk about, the various coping mechanisms that you have evolved.
So I evolved these 7 therapies, as I call it, and just so that you know, I also got mental health professionals from around the world to read the book, to make sure that what I'm writing is also correct from a medical point of view. So I said that actually there are three things you need to do to survive a mental health condition first. One is the medical therapies. So whether that is drug therapy if you need medication, or talk therapy if you need a psychologist. That's like a starting point for the treatment and recovery, and maximum people don't want to do that, right? They don't want to go to the doctor, and people just struggle with that. So that acceptance took me a long time also. I mean, I think it took me 13 years to go to a psychiatrist. So it really is a big thing in our country where we don't want to take medication. So the medical therapies, then what I call love therapy, which is the role of the caregivers. You need their support. One of the things I say is that mental health is a team sport. It's not something that you can do on your own, and you have to really think who is on your team and whose team are you on, right? Because even though people are taking care of me, I am the primary caregiver for my family, and I'm also a caregiver for people who around me who might be suffering from depression. So both of these things happen. And the third part is really the lifestyle part. Again, I think we talk about lifestyle so much in the physical sense, but how important lifestyle, by which I mean sleep, nutrition, exercise, play, how important that is from a mental point is really, really important. So like sleep is really, really critical. Like any mental illness, if you are not, if you don't have enough sleep, it really affects it both ways. So taking care of that is really important. This is just about survival. If you can't do these three things, you may not even survive a mental health condition. But if you want to thrive with it, if you want to reach a stage where you can say, okay, I've been in a good place for 5 years, or I'm coming and I'm giving a talk about it, I've written a book about it, then you need to go beyond that. You need to have good family, you need to have good friends and ecosystem around you, which I call really the therapy of empathy. Who's this हमदर्दी करने वाले कौन हैं? कौन allies कौन हैं आपकी ज़िंदगी में? Work therapy. Now work can be a huge stressful thing, or it can be therapeutic. There have been times, I think for all of us, where work has been very stressful, but therapy भी है उसमें. तो वो balance कैसे ढूंढ सकते हैं? वो बहुत ज़रूरी है. And spiritual therapy, I think we all understand, and I'm sure this audience understands very well. But really, spiritual therapy has helped me a lot in terms of understanding my condition and going beyond it to become really a better person. I actually say that bipolarity has been my guru. That in fact your illness can actually become a guru for you and teach you a lot. So that's something that I talk about in the book. And then the last thing I think is, what is the conversation you're having with yourself? That is really, really important. आपका self-talk क्या है? आप खुद को क्या बता रहे हैं? So I started maintaining a journal about 10 years ago. And I wish I had started it 10 years before that also. Because I've shared a lot of the journal in the book also. But the journal is really a place where I could have a conversation and say, what is causing my mood swings? Why am I feeling this way? And then take a step back and say, what can I do about it? How can I actually do something? If I'm feeling angry, if I'm feeling frustrated, if I'm feeling unhappy, if I'm feeling happy. Generally, I don't write in it when I'm feeling happy. So, unfortunately, when I read the journal, because when I'm happy, I'm too busy being happy. So, I don't know what is it to write in the journal. But, so if I read the journal, it sounds like I've been unhappy for 10 years, which is not the best thing. But it's a great way of getting some detachment from emotions. And also reflecting and growing, So, and that really doesn't cost anything, or it's just something that you can do for yourself. So, these are some of the therapies that have really helped me.
Yeah, so these are the hacks that you created, and they seem to be doable hacks. You talked of the team of caregivers that are there for you, and also you yourself being the center of this entire ecosystem that you're living in. Would you like to talk a little about how you met the most important person in your life who's helped you through difficult times, and how you met, jab we met? It's a very sweet love story. I think it should be shared.
Sure, it's quite a filmy story in some ways. So I was at home one day at the office, and I get an email from somebody with a very dramatic explanation and pura biodata ke saath that I've had this kind of life and this is what's happened to me and everything, and I need your help to write an essay to get into Harvard. So at that time I was doing this free counseling clinic, for my sister and from other people saying, get into universities. Nowadays people are charging lakhs for it, but I did it for free. And so this person came into my life and he sent me this resume which said, my father has worked on the shop floor of a company, and I have, studied my way up. I worked for a politician in Delhi, and now I'm applying to Harvard. And in between, I also had an accident and I fell off a train and I survived. And I said, now with this kind of story, I must actually meet this person. And the first day when I met him, I was actually quite hungover, I must admit. And he had this terrible haircut, and he looked like he'd just come out of jail or something. He looked awful. And so, but his essays also were very bad. I told him that, you're never going to get in, and I'm not going to write your essays for you, but we will just do the best we can. So we started working on them, and he didn't get in. And so then that meant that he was in Mumbai for 1 more year, and so we started talking.
So now coming back to the book. People associate a condition like bipolarity with mood swings and ups and downs. But what about the recovery phase? That is not discussed. So I think it would be really great if you share your experience of the recovery phase that you've been through, and how easy or difficult it is to get into it, and how do you handle that?
I think, the thing is with mental illness, there's a long recovery phase before you can get back into your routine. So let's say I've had this kind of manic episode where, for 2-3 weeks or a month, maybe even 6 weeks, I've just not been my normal self. It then takes me a long time, by the time the medication kicks in, to get back to those energy levels where you are your normal self. And you also feel very depressed. You feel that I might feel embarrassed about what has happened, or I don't feel I have the energy to go out. I'm just sitting at home. So I'm very, I try and spend time with the children as a way of kind of being back into this world. So I think recovery is a really, really important thing. And I think whether it is bipolar or any kind of mental health thing that you're looking for, it takes a long time to come out of it fully. And it's important for people to understand that, like employers or family members have to be really, really patient with people to understand that.
Yeah. There's another thing that I wanted to talk to the audience about, is that in your case, workplace conversations were game changers. You were at work and you were suffering from various phases of bipolarity. But it was those conversations at the workplace which became game changers for you. How did it happen?
Yeah, so I think the thing with something like a mental health condition, we might tell our friends and family about it, they will come to know in any case. But we are very reluctant to tell our colleagues about it because we are worried about our jobs, we are worried about what people will say, we are worried about promotions, we are worried about the work that will be given. But in my case, what happened was even I didn't tell my employers, not employers, but I was writing for the Mint newspaper at the time. And I didn't tell them for quite a while. But it reached a crisis situation where I wasn't able to do my work. Right? The deadlines were being missed and the stories were not happening. Because also what I did was I would take on too much work because I wanted to prove myself, and then I wasn't able to do it. So then I had to actually finally tell my editor about it. And they were so open to it that it gave me a lot of confidence. People tell me, Aparna, you're able to talk to people about it. But that's because that environment around me was accepting and accommodated me. So I think companies, particularly in India, have a huge role to play in mental health. Because they are, let's face it, a lot of the stress comes from companies. But they can also be the people who can fix the problem to a large extent, So there are some people, very senior people have told me you can't bring your problems to the workplace. But I'm like, where else would you go with it, So I think it's really important that the workplace becomes a place where you find the allies that you need, you know.
So, in other words, that brings us to the fact that employers, workplace management, HR, if you will, should be talking about mental health in their own environments, in their own companies. But are there any tips that you'd like to give them? Because it is so stigmatized, it is so, it's a matter of shame. You are embarrassed to tell people that you're feeling depressed or you're suffering from a mental illness. That's how our system works.
Yeah, actually I'm doing, even since I've written the book in the last 6 months, I'm doing a lot of work on workplace mental health and trying to educate companies about this. And I think there are a lot of things that companies can do, right from the leadership taking a position about this, taking an interest in this. Many times the leaders will just leave it to HR. And then HR have got so many other priorities also going on, so this doesn't become a priority. So if leadership makes it a priority, that's really important. And everything from policies to awareness to training of managers on how to have a conversation. Because we may not, you and somebody, every person is not going to have a mental health condition, but everybody can be an ally to somebody who has it. How do you even have that? So you can have mental health champions, for example. You can have leave policies. You can have, just overall sensitization on how to have conversations. You can create a culture which is open. You can put employee assistance programs into place where people can have access to counseling. So all of these different initiatives can happen.
Yes, and I think your book has been an important landmark. एक मील का पत्थर जिसको हम कह सकते हैं नीतियों को लेकर, for policies, now that we are talking about it, and interestingly now we have a mental health act in the country which helps people to bring this out of the closet. And also very recently the Supreme Court order which has which directs insurance companies to take note of mental health and to include it. It is not an exclusion. Of course, there are conditions and various terms that have to be met. But the important thing is that the fine print that we talk about. Would you like to talk? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that insurance companies have to offer to include mental health. But I think from what I understand is one has to read the fine print quite carefully to see let's say for example, is counseling included or not, which diseases are covered or pre-existing diseases are covered for how long. So there's all sorts of little bits of fine print. When you actually pick up a health policy, you should look very, very closely for that if this is something that is relevant to you.
Of course, a policy is as good as its implementation, and therefore I think it is important for all of us to educate ourselves on that and to become more aware of these national policies and laws that have come into play in our own country. But there are companies, of course, and they are hugely competitive. The whole environment is in a company, or especially in the private sector, in the corporate sector, is about the bottom line and where are the profits, and there is competition. And at the same time, they want their employees to take yoga classes and get that calming mantra around them. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, right? That at one level, you're creating a stressful environment and then you're telling the individual employee, now you cope with it. Now I'll give you a yoga class and you go for the yoga class. It's like telling a person who is drowning, please learn how to swim. That is not going to happen. So I think somewhere that balance has to happen where you are looking for performance and there is empathy, both. Why is it not possible to have performance or empathy? I just wrote a story about a company which is into mental health actually. They have a dog in the office and the dog is called the Chief Fun Officer. Okay, and that's the owner's dog. And everybody, when they get stressed out, they come and play with the dog. Okay, and then it's like a stress buster for the whole organization. And what she's trying to say also is that can't we have a way that you have high performance, but without being a toxic workplace? Actually, India, the statistics are that India has more stressed out, burnt out, anxious workforce than anywhere else in Asia. Because we have such a toxic work culture, which is so patriarchal and hierarchical. So people just find that really difficult, that the only way to get work done is to be a tough boss. There's no empathy there. But is it not possible to actually have performance and have empathy? Like, if in my case what happened, like, because the organization was empathetic towards me, and this is not just one place, there were a couple of organizations like that that I worked with, they gave me a second chance, they gave me some empathy, and because of that I have performed for them in the long run. I have stayed with them. One organization I've been writing for 14 years, another organization I've been working with, teaching for 5 years. So if you actually show empathy to people when they need it, they will actually turn out to be the performers that you need in the long run. So this marriage of performance and empathy is really important.
What do you think, Aparna, is the role of mental health, or at least an introduction to it at the curriculum level? Because संवेदनशीलता की कमी है. The lack of sensitivity is quite
no, I think it's really important. In my son's schools, I've got 2 boys, they are 12 and 14. They are taught all this in school, you know, empathy and mental health. You know, we were on holiday in the UK, in London, and they have, in the underground, they have these chairs which are reserved for people with disabilities. And it was written over there, not every disability is visible. So my 11-year-old son, he looked at that and he said, "Mama, this is for you, this seat." You know, and you have to be a little careful also how you say that, because somebody might take that in the wrong way. But he was saying that sweetly out of, like, this is his way of being empathetic, you know. So, and they now use words like, "Oh, you are getting triggered, you need counseling," you know, like they use that language so freely. Sometimes it can go to the other extreme also. But I think what really, to your point, actually you made a very important point. What is happening in India is that we have one generation that says, what is mental health? I don't even know what that word means. This doesn't apply to my generation. We never had to go through any of this. I think Kapil Dev made those remarks recently also, that we didn't have depression in our time and all that. And then we have a younger generation that is much more open about their feelings. And is going through a lot of stress. Just today in a bookstore, I met this young girl, and she said, "There's no point you going to colleges until you talk to the older people and get them to solve the problem, because they don't understand what we are going through."
So there's this whole issue of denial. मतलब मानने को तैयार नहीं है कि कोई परेशानी है. There is a mental health issue. And I think there's a very important message that comes in this book, that it's not a big deal. You have to just accept it and address it, and also catch the bull by the horn, as it were. So, in your case, what would be your advice to parents, young parents? What's the things that their antennas should be up for, or even young people, for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, so many things, right? Like, but for parenting, I think the biggest thing is don't be judgmental, right? And don't impose your expectations onto the child of what the child wants. You know, let the child be what they want to be. You know, and I think, I just think that data shows we are going to live a very long life. Right? It's not that in today's zamana that, you know, earlier on everybody is going to sort of after 60 and you're sick basically and you're not going to do anything in life. No, we're going to live healthily till about 80. You're going to have many, many careers. You know, you're not going to be stuck to one thing. So this whole thing of you have to get into this college and you have to, you know, study and get into one of those top places, otherwise your life is over, is ridiculous. I'm reading, by the way, a fascinating book called 28 Jobs, 28 States, 28 Weeks. It's about a 28-year-old boy from Orissa who said, "I'm going to do one job in every state for 1 week for 28 weeks, just to show how different things you could do." Oh, you know, he made a book about it. It's quite interesting to read. So the point is, that's one thing. And the second thing I would really say is avoid comparisons. You know, why, you know, this time I was reading this poem, I said, you know, I want to jump off a building. Why did I, of all people, want to jump off a building? Because I didn't feel good enough. I just did not feel good enough that even though I went to Harvard, and maybe that was a problem, because I went to Harvard and because I went to Oxford, I had these sky-high expectations for myself. And I thought that unless I was successful I would not be happy. And it taken me a long time to realize that only when I'm happy will I be successful. Happiness is success. Success is not happiness. You know, and we are constantly telling ourselves, right, that we are not good enough, that we are not rich enough, we are not smart enough, we are not well-traveled enough, all that. And I think, you know, my therapist actually made me say, she said, write down on a piece of paper, may I choose myself and love myself because I am good enough. You know.
So wonderful. Now, we're coming towards the end of our my question and answers with you. We'll open it to the audience shortly. But before we do that, I just want you to tell us, why did you write this book? Why did you want to tell this story?
You know, I am a storyteller, so I had this amazing story that I wanted to share. I thought I could help people. Actually, there was not too much stigma in my mind, you know, because I didn't realize when I wrote the book that how much stigma there is. You know, and I also think that, you know, you have obviously been in situations which require a lot of courage. But for me, courage is a marathon which starts with trust and ends with normalization, you know. So earlier I was scared of telling people I was bipolar, but slowly I started telling people. And I got the trust and I got the confidence and I got the courage. So by the time I started writing the book, I felt I was quite confident. But, you know, as writers, we write to make sense of the world. That's how we make sense of the world. Whatever's going on in our mind, that's how we make sense of the world, is through the written word. You know, and that's how I brought clarity to my own life through this.
Thank you so much. And now we have the floor open for questions from the audience.
Full session. Thank you so much. I'm Durva Sharma. My question is that, like we say, jab we met, you mentioned, there was a dialogue in that movie that said, "मैं अपनी favorite हूँ." Now that's not a Kareena Kapoor thing, I guess. That, I think, is a realization every person should have. And from what I've gathered, what Neetaji said about your book and what you've told, is that should be the tagline. That मैं अपनी favorite हूँ.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important, and I'll just give an example, you know, like weight loss and women, okay? Now, this is a perennial thing for all of us. Now, I have actually really gained a lot of weight in the last 7-8 years in particular. I don't know if it's about turning 40 or if it's about the, you know, medicines or just my lifestyle, sugar addiction, thyroid, God knows what, everything. But the problem is that, you know, there's been a lot of weight gain. What do all of us do when we gain weight? We put away all our best clothes and we say we are going to fit into it one day. We're going to put those jeans and we're going to put that salwar kameez and we're going to say we are going to fit into it, we're not giving it away. Okay, then we don't want to buy new clothes because we say, no, I'm going to lose weight, so why am I going to invest in those clothes? You know, and what we're really telling ourselves is that, again, the same thing, you're not good enough, I don't really think you're worth it right now. You know, I'm not the favorite, and you think the younger me is the favorite, you know. And so this year I said, I actually need a lot of clothes now because I'm launching this book. So I said, I'm just going to spend the money and get the clothes, you know, and just enjoy it for now. And I hope I will go back to what I was. But even then, I'm just going to enjoy and love this version of me because this is enough, right? This is it.
The present moment is the moment we should live in. But wonderful is the word. And I'm so looking forward to read it. I have a cousin brother, his wife, they realized it now, she's very young, that she's bipolar. She has a son, a 3-year-old who's autistic. So they are going through a lot. What message should I pass on to her? I'm going to send this book to her, that's one thing for sure.
Yeah, well, she can always connect with me. I mean, a lot of people are connecting with me on Instagram or whatever, LinkedIn, or I've got my card if you want my card. But I think, first of all, it's just that it's, you know, it's very treatable. Like, if you're aware of it, the sooner you're aware of it, and that you can manage your triggers. See, that's the main thing, to understand what is it that's causing the mood swing. If you can understand that, and if you can tackle that, then you can actually be in a state where the mood swing doesn't become a mood swing. And often the things that cause mood swings are things like interpersonal relationships, work-related stress. And, you know, these things happen all at the same time, then it becomes worse. You know, so interpersonal relationships was a big problem area for me. You know, because they are things that cause us anger, frustration, and sadness, and anxiety, and all these things, you know. So it's everyday life that can become that trigger. You need to understand what the triggers are. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we saw.
There's one here, then we'll go.
Thank you, Aparna. Thank you for writing the book, and I really look forward to get it and read it. As Meeta said in its earlier, introduction, that all of us may be relating with what you said. I was relating with myself. There are several, dips. There are mood swings. There are. How do you really realize that it is a serious problem? Now you really need a doctor to be seen, because.
See, I think that you can distinguish between, let's say, a psychiatrist and a therapist, right? A therapist you can go to at any time for any issue. A psychologist or a therapist or a counselor. You don't need to have a clinical diagnosis to go and talk to someone about what you're feeling. They can decide like how often you need to come. Do you need to go for 5 sessions or 6 sessions? You want to come frequently, more frequently, less frequently. It's good to talk. It's always good to talk to somebody who you trust and who's open and who's impartial and non-judgmental. So that's as far as the therapist goes. If you are reaching a situation, maybe a therapist or a family doctor can advise you to seek a psychiatrist. They are more into medication. So, not every situation requires medication. So that would go on a referral based of a doctor or, of another family doctor.
Little bigger question, is it gender specific? Because women are really prone, perhaps, because they are emotionally.
But I think women think they have that mental health issues is their entitlement. I don't think so.
That's why I'm asking you.
I think
they are emotionally so.
No. I think men have as many issues, and a lot of men write to me also.
Okay.
It's just that they don't express it. They don't have the opportunity to be vulnerable and to share it with someone else. And a lot of men are also caregivers. We think of women being the caregivers of the family, but a lot of men are the caregivers. In the situation you described, I'm sure, sorry?
My brother.
Your brother is a caregiver, right? So there is that situation also, yeah.
There's one over there.
There was somebody at the back.
Thank you both of you for a wonderful, very lively conversation. And it's just one thing that you haven't mentioned in the conversation, maybe it's there in the book, because this is related to something that I really don't know how to formulate the question. But have you undergone or have you had phases where you have had extra-dimensional experiences? By extra-dimensional, I would reach out to so many areas of awareness and so many, unnamed experiences during the course of your condition.
So the thing is, when one is manic or you're in that manic phase, you see a lot and you hear a lot, and you're not really sure what of that is real and not real, because it is real to you, right? You're going through it, it's like a dream. When you're in a dream, that dream is real for you during those 3 hours or 4 hours or 5 hours that you're sleeping. Same thing in mania, except it's going on for days rather than it's just a dream. So I think there have been times where I feel there's been like a past life experience and I've seen something, but I've not described it deliberately in the book because, so much of that is unknown, and I don't want to get readers to go in that direction without really having something scientific behind it,
Thank you so much.
And we deal with a lot of that anyway in our country.
Good evening, I'm Pragya here, I'm a psychologist, and let me first of all say thank you so much for using the word allies. It's a very nice word. Since you've got in people from the mental health area as allies, and as people who are reading the book to become allies. So that's such a wonderful thing that you've said about allies. The other thing which I'd like to really say here is that you've emphasized on the fact that all these therapies are so important and nobody overtakes each other. So that's really, really good because it kind of helps people to understand. A lot of my professional work just goes on to explain the importance of medication also at some point. So I'm really very, very thankful to you that you brought it up in your book. Thank you so much.
Thanks. I hope you can use the book in your practice.
Yeah.
Because some therapists that I've interacted with have started using that.
Yeah,
So
I will try it. Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks a lot for such an enlightening session. It's especially useful for me as I am heading one of the institutions here, the medical college here in Jaipur. Of late, we have realized that the students in medical college, as we all know, that the medical studies are probably one of the toughest studies, which may be tougher than any of those corporate job culture or something like that. I've also been interacting with these students maybe fortnightly or so. And the major malice, which is the major problem which is being faced by them is that because of this, the social media coming into their private life, into their lives, be it academic lives or otherwise, that is probably taking the major toll and leading them to those sort of mental problems. I think your session will help me further to take care of their mental issues, their mental insecurities. I've been on it anyways for the last few months. Do you think that this problem with the social media is one major issue which leads to this such type of bipolar disorders or even lesser spectrum of these mental illness?
Yeah, I think it's great to have you in the audience. I think that social media is really a challenge for everyone because you're constantly judging yourself. Other people are judging you and then you're judging yourself based on that. So I actually do a talk for young people called What I Wish I Knew About Mental Health in My 20s. So it's really aimed at young people and the issues that they go through, whether it's careers, studies, relationships, social media, all the things that can trigger problems that can become problems later on.
So do you think we need to stress on the children that the social media, they should try and shun the social media? I mean, that is an important part of mental wellness.
I think it's, you can't dismiss it from their lives because it is important, but how much attachment and importance do you attach to it? That is the question of can they kind of deal with that, Are they living their whole life through this platform? That's very, very difficult. Are they just entirely based on that, or is there something more meaningful in their life that is more real? Do they have those real relationships?
It might be worthwhile, sir, to have Aparna as a guest speaker
I think that
for the student body.
Anyway, just to share with you, our institution is into the 75 years of its inception, and we are organizing series of orations around the year. So,
sure.
Pleasure to have you.
So Jaipur, we have one more chance to interact with Aparna.
Great session, not without saying, and there's no need to say that. And anchoring too was great. With little bit of Hindi beach mein, that added value to that.
I need to improve my Hindi.
You did great job with little bit intervention also in Hindi, from your part also. Abhinav, Indra and Deepika, they have dared to bear like you. So maybe, why not you people get connected kind of network to take this on a bigger scale?
Yeah, why don't you connect us and then we can do it?
I can give it a try.
No, actually I have reached out to, not to Deepika directly, but to her sister, because they run the non-profit Live, Love, Life. So reached out to them to see if there's something that can be done. There are a lot of good people doing work in this space. Everybody is working a little bit independently, So if people can kind of come together, then it becomes a space within the health system that's taken more seriously. Because otherwise chronic diseases are always taken seriously, infectious diseases are taken very seriously. Things like mental health are not, even within the medical system, taken that seriously.
Even Virat also agreed and confessed. He too had problem.
Yeah.
So such people with such a following cross-section all over, So that might do great job.
Aparna, extremely grateful to you for what you have exposed today. When I came into this session, I was discussing with my wife that is it worth it? What are we really talking about, mental health? You know, that attitude of people who think they don't have any problems. Every human being has a situation which may not qualify to be called bipolar, and yet in some format it is a portion of bipolar in a smaller percentage. Having said that, my question to you deals with parenthood. You are lucky to have 2 children and a supportive husband, evidently a supportive husband. Did and do you feel that your children are tending to be flippant about mental illness? The way the conversation went on that underground in London makes me feel that they have developed an attitude which is not necessarily the kind of attitude we should allow our children to have.
No, so yeah. No, he didn't say it in good humor actually. He meant it generally, genuinely, that we recognize that you have a mental health issue. It could be a disability, and your disability is invisible. So this is something for you, like it applies to you. It's a special thing for you. That's the way he said it. Look, there are times when they are flippant, but there are also a lot of times when they are open. You know, and for boys to tell you, I'm anxious today, I'm feeling like, you know, this exam, I don't know how I'm going to manage it, I'm feeling that, I think that's really important. You know, in a world which is so kind of alpha male and macho and this and that, and they also open up and they talk about what they're going through, and they understand the word anxiety, even at this age. Doesn't mean that they can't handle it, it's not pressure. We will always discuss it and say, okay, this is what we can do, what we cannot do. But at least they're sharing how they feel. And I think that's really, really important. I think, yes, there are situations where, you know, for other diseases like obsessive compulsive disorder, for example, you know, people will say, I'm OCD, or I've got ADHD, or I've got these, or, you know, there is a sense that maybe it goes a little bit too far also. But I think it's more important to empathize and to sensitize people to this. You know, and that they understand that this is something that happens. You know, just again, like my older one, he is so more than my husband. In fact, I mean, you asked a question about my husband, but the person who's probably the most supportive of me is my son, because he is so quick to pick up on mood swings. I don't know how many wives will feel their husbands pick up on their mood swings. But my son really is 14 and he can pick up on my mood swings through my body language, through this. He'll say, Mama, where are you not your normal self today? Or sometimes he's literally, when he's 9 years old, he said, why are you so silent, Mama? Why are your eyes red? You know, these are things that children can pick up. You know, and we have to give them the environment in which they can express themselves and not be seen as a failure for having feelings of anxiety and, you know, feeling of sadness.
You're so fortunate.
Yeah, I am really lucky.
Do we have time for another question or?
One last question.
Hello, so I'll just make it quick. Thank you so much for this amazing session. My name is Shelly and I'm a mind shift coach. I help people feel what they need to feel in order to get to what they want to do. So my question to you is, when it comes to mental health, do you think there is a kind of a bias somewhere in order to be happy or in that positive area of, you know, because I sense, like in my interaction with my clients also, the point is, can I be happy, can I be peaceful, you know, can I be positive? And I sense this hatred towards negative emotions, and I believe that when we talk about mental health, it is kindly misunderstood that, you know, if you are mentally healthy, that means you are mentally happy.
Yeah, I mean, I know exactly what you mean. I'm definitely in a better place now that I'm happier. Okay, I think everybody around me is in a better place now that I'm happier. I think that period in which I was really going through a lot of ups and downs, I was very tough on everyone. I also know that I could relapse at any point, you know, and so then I have to be very careful with my health. But the way I look at it now and I try and tell people is that happiness is not a destination. It's a practice. It's like a yoga practice. The more you do it, the better you become at it. It's just not a destination that you will reach and you've got there and that's it, I've got my quota of happiness and I'm set for life, you know. So I think, and the other thing I definitely think now much more is being able to kind of just have that self-awareness to be careful on how I respond to something, right? Even if I'm feeling anger and frustration, not to hit the send button, right? And not to respond. So just separate myself from the emotion a lot more. So those are just practices that I think we employ to say that there's no good emotions. My first therapist also said, make friends with all your emotions. You know, good, bad, ugly, make friends with all of them. So only when you start doing that, then you can.
Thank you so much, Aparna, for a very engaging session, and thank you for being such a wonderful artist.
Thank you very much.
Awesome opportunity. This was a great interaction. Thank you.
Actually, I have reached out to, not to Deepika directly, but to her sister, because they run the non-profit Live, Love, Life. So reached out to them to see if there's something that can be done. You know, there are a lot of good people doing work in this space. Everybody is working a little bit independently, you know. So if people can kind of come together, then it becomes a space within the health system that's taken more seriously. You know, because otherwise chronic diseases are always taken seriously, infectious diseases are taken very seriously. Things like mental health are not, even within the medical system, taken that seriously.
Even Virat also agreed and confessed. He too had problems.
Yeah.
So such people with such a following, cross-section all over, so that might do great job.
Aparna, extremely grateful to you for what you have exposed today. When I came into this session, I was discussing with my wife that is it worth it? What are we really talking about, mental health? You know, that attitude of people who think they don't have any problems. Every human being has a situation which may not qualify to be called bipolar, and yet in some format it is a portion of bipolar in a smaller percentage. Having said that, my question to you deals with parenthood. You are lucky to have 2 children and a supportive husband, evidently a supportive husband. Did and do you feel that your children are tending to be flippant about mental illness? The way the conversation went on that underground in London makes me feel that they have developed an attitude which is not necessarily the kind of attitude we should allow our children to have.
No, so yeah. No, he didn't say it in good humor actually. He meant it genuinely that we recognize that you have a mental health issue. It could be a disability and your disability is invisible. So this is something for you, like it applies to you, it's a special thing for you. That's the way he said it. Look, there are times when they are flippant, but there are also a lot of times when they are open. You know, and for boys to tell you, I'm anxious today, I'm feeling like, you know, this exam, I don't know how I'm going to manage it, I'm feeling that, I think that's really important. You know, in a world which is so kind of alpha male and macho and this and that, and they also open up and they talk about what they're going through, and they understand the word anxiety, even at this age. Doesn't mean that they can't handle it, it's not pressure. We'll always discuss it and say, okay, this is what we can do, what we cannot do. But at least they're sharing how they feel. And I think that's really, really important. I think, yes, there are situations where, you know, for other diseases like obsessive compulsive disorder, for example, you know, people will say, I'm OCD, or I've got ADHD, or I've got these, or, you know, there is a sense that maybe it goes a little bit too far also. But I think it's more important to empathize and to sensitize people to this. You know, and that they understand that this is something that happens. You know, just again, like my older one, he is so more than my husband. In fact, I mean, you asked a question about my husband, but the person who's probably the most supportive of me is my son, because he is so quick to pick up on mood swings. I don't know how many wives will feel their husbands pick up on their mood swings. but my son really is 14 and he can pick up on my mood swings through my body language, through this he'll say, Mama, why are you, where you're not your normal self today? Or sometimes he's literally, when he's 9 years old, he said, why are you so silent, Mama? Why are your eyes red? You know, these are things that children can pick up, you know, and we have to give them the environment in which they can express themselves and not be seen as a failure for having feelings of anxiety and, you know, feeling of sadness.
You're so fortunate.
Yeah, I am really lucky.
Do we have time for another question or?
Hello, so I'll just make it quick. Thank you so much for this amazing session. My name is Shelly and I'm a mind shift coach. I help people feel what they need to feel in order to get to what they want to do. So my question to you is, when it comes to mental health, do you think there is a kind of a bias somewhere in order to be happy or in that positive area of, you know, because I sense, like in my interaction with my clients also, the point is, can I be happy, can I be peaceful, you know, can I be positive? And I sense this hatred towards negative emotions. And I believe that when we talk about mental health, it is kindly misunderstood that, you know, if you are mentally healthy, that means you are mentally happy.
Yeah, I mean, I know exactly what you mean. I'm definitely in a better place now that I'm happier. Okay, I think everybody around me is in a better place now that I'm happier. I think that period in which I was really going through a lot of ups and downs, I was very tough on everyone. I also know that I could relapse at any point, you know, and so then I have to be very careful with my health. But the way I look at it now and I try and tell people is that happiness is not a destination. It's a practice. It's like a yoga practice. The more you do it, the better you become at it. It's just not a destination that you will reach and you've got there and that's it, I've got my quota of happiness and I'm set for life, you know. So I think, and the other thing I definitely think now much more is being able to kind of just have that self-awareness to be careful on how I respond to something, right? Even if I'm feeling anger and frustration, not to hit the send button, right? And not to respond. So just separate myself from the emotion a lot more. So those are just practices that I think we employ to say that there's no good emotions. My first therapist also said, make friends with all your emotions. You know, good, bad, ugly, make friends with all of them. So only when you start doing that, then you can.
Thank you so much, Aparna, for a very engaging session, and thank you for being such a wonderful artist.
Thank you very much.
Awesome opportunity. This was a great interaction. Thank you.
I think thank you is also not enough. You've opened up so many gates and doors for us which we really need to think about, and I'm sure all of you will agree with me here. So can we just show some love, please? We'll make do with it. But thank you, Aparna. Thank you, Meeta, for holding it together. Aparna, we want to hear you a little more. So we need to find other chances to get you back to Jaipur.
Yeah, I'm always happy to come back to Jaipur.
Yes.
I've not been to my Haveli now for like 10 years actually. So I just need reasons to come to Rajasthan and to Jaipur for sure anytime.
No, we'll plan something extra. I'm going to request Mr. Rishi Matru, the General Manager for ITC Rajputana, to please come up and give our mementos to our speakers. Thank you, Rishi.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew.
And thank you once again for being such a lovely and engaged audience. I really appreciate each one of you being with us. But everyone knows the drill. Just pick up a copy of their line behind and get signed by the author. And Aparna, we have to have that.